shall we?
So this tea, coffee, and code is a casual conversation. Hopefully now we've resolved all the technical issues, but probably not. Today we're planning to talk about Windows 11 specifically, and Windows 11 with RAD Studio Delphi C++ Builder 11. Windows 11 is the latest release. It came out last week of Windows. It's the successor to Windows 10, and it requires specific hardware. You have to have a fairly recent CPU, a very recent CPU, and a TPM module. Are you guys familiar with TPM modules?
I am, yes, very much so. Do you want me to talk
Yeah,
about
so
that?
I bought a motherboard that I thought had a TPM module. Turned out it had a plug for a TPM module, so I had to order a TPM module separately that has not arrived yet.
Yeah, well, what a TPM module does is, and I didn't know this until I found out we needed one. It allows you to, it's basically a protected area. And in fact, the iPhone makes a big deal of having, this kind of encryption area on it. But apparently PCs have had it for some time. I did not know. And it allows the machine to store things that are secrets, I suppose is the best description, but valuable bits of code in a way that cannot be accessed easily, shall we say. If you can think of it as like a big password encryption tool, and on top of that TPM module, as it's called, I think there's trusted something module. I can't remember exactly what it's called it. But you can also have secure boot as well. So the idea is that a virus cannot go and do stuff to your boot sector, because of course back in the old days, for those of you that are not sort of youngsters, certainly even a few years ago, boot viruses could actually infect your hard drive, which would mean when your machine rebooted, you would have a boot virus, which was very, very difficult to get rid of. Because what would happen is typically DOS or Windows or whatever operating system you had would effectively be running after the virus had run. And so it was a massive problem. And TPM allows you to prevent that kind of thing happening. Now, most of us, including me, didn't even care that existed until Windows 11 came out, and one of the things they wanted was a TPM module, but not anything particular, of TPM module version 2. And that was a requirement that caught a few people out, because I've got a very powerful machine. My machine is a development machine. It's actually relatively new. I think I bought it earlier this year. It's an MSI gaming machine because, hey, like most developers, I want lots of power and stuff happening. Got a really good graphics card, got lots of RAM and all the rest of it. And I ran the Windows 11 pre-check because there is one that comes with that. And it said, you can't install Windows 11 because you don't have a trusted program module, a TPM module on the machine. I thought, well, that seems impossible because, this is a brand new machine with the top of the range motherboard. I go into the BIOS settings and find out that actually it does have it, but by default it's turned off on my motherboard. So I had to go and turn on the TPM module, and then I had to make another BIOS setting before my machine would then pass the Windows 11 checks. And this hit a lot of people with Windows 11's sort of little pre-check. And I think Microsoft backed off a bit from that, but they now, with the launch version, you do have to have a TPM version 2 working. So it's a bit of a problem. But that's not the only issue, I think, with Windows 11. I've got one machine which has got an i7 2.9 gigahertz CPU. That's not a slow CPU. It's got 16 gig of RAM, not slow. It's got a 2 terabyte SSD drive, not slow. Cannot run Windows 11 because the Windows 11 also requires a particular family of i7. And the one that I have, it just happens to be a little bit too old. It's like a year before model or something like that. And it's a relatively up-to-date laptop, but no, that's it. It will never be supported with Windows 11. So that laptop, which I happily develop on with Delphi 11 on and all the rest of it, cannot run it, even though it's got a TPM2 module, even though it's got all the RAM it's supposed to have, even though it's got a SSD in it. It cannot run, and an external graphics card actually on the motherboard. You know, it's not a toy machine. This is a gaming machine, but the i7 not fast enough, never going to run, not the right family, so presumably doesn't contain some instruction set that was introduced in a later version of the i7. That's it. Nothing I can do. Because it's the CPU on the motherboard, I would just need a new motherboard. I might as well buy a new laptop for that. Desktop machine works fine, by the way, but well,
Yeah.
it works fine in the sense that it can run Windows 11, but whether it works fine.
You didn't skip. I mean, we were focusing on that, but I think another thing a lot of people don't realize is the way you boot your system is also something that is required by Windows 11. So when I got my computer, I switched the boot sequence so that I was able to switch between Linux, because I use that for disaster recovery. I use a Linux boot CD with Acronis, you know, and so the whole secure boot sequence wouldn't work, or I didn't want to go into the hassle to boot into Windows 11, into Windows 10 recovery mode, and then use this console. I didn't want any of that, so I switched my boot system away from the secure boot, and also didn't do UEFI. And I also didn't do the boot record on the disk was a master boot record. That's also not supported. And back in the day, it wasn't possible to switch to the new system easily. But by now, at least you have command line utilities where you can switch your hard drive over into the other one using a few command lines. But still, and that was the tricky part for me, you have to learn about the new way to boot things. The UEFI is working completely different to what you're used to. It's not like that you type in a command for a partition and then say /mbr, enter. You know, you have to find a certain file for the processor that you want to use, and then you have to specify that in the BIOS. And with all my machines, and this is the tricky part here in the States, I have a Dell machine. I had to do several BIOS updates, one after another, to become compatible with Windows 11, because the previous BIOS versions would not allow me to use the UEFI boot image, or whatever you want to call it, that supports the TPM2. You know, even though there was a TPM2 module on the board, it wasn't supported by the BIOS for the booting as Windows 11 needed it. So the tool that you mentioned is very important, the upgrade requirement tool from Windows. So you get a checklist what you need to fix, and don't think it's going to be a 5-minute thing. It took me at least 4 hours to migrate my partitions, to add the boot sequence, and of course that's a downside. I can't boot my recovery system anymore. So I gotta switch over to the other way of doing things, which is in my from my experience not as easy and not as reliable as the one that I've been using before. So that's definitely gotten a little bit tricky, you know. And
I've put some of the links at the window, by the way. The chat.
Okay, perfect. And with another machine. Just like you said, gaming machine, very big processor at the time, about like 2 years ago, big graphics card. Processor is fine, but no TPM module. And then I had to Google, oh, this board has a TPM module slot. And then, okay, go to Amazon and order it. But guess what? A couple of other people had the very same idea. So
when you say couple, I think you mean couple of thousand. Yes, yeah.
Exactly. So to get, I would think, I actually left the German office before the part arrived, and it hasn't arrived yet. So we're talking weeks. We're talking days. Like it's an Asus board, very popular board at the time. So I doubt another mean thing is like it's become a commodity like the PlayStation 5. It's like, oh, you need a TPM2 module? Well, pay me $200 and it's yours. Yeah, exactly.
Mine was only $80. Wow, which I thought seemed like a lot.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. If you consider a new main board, is like, I don't want to say something wrong, but a new main board is like 200, 300 now. I haven't monitored the chip prices recently, but like just the main board. So buying a new main board would actually be the better alternative, but then you would have to exchange all the other parts. So we're kind of, I don't want to say anything wrong here, but like Windows 11 kind of moved in the way of another big software company that makes you change your hardware constantly because they tell you it's no longer fast enough.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think they have good reasons for saying TPM2 is a requirement, and I get why they're doing it. As a technologist, I get it, but here are three people here who are, two of us are MVPs, and Jim is, chief developer advocate / chief engineer. We are not novice users. We're not. I know we can't get the stream audio working straight away, but hey, that's not our specialization. But we write programs for a living. We live and breathe hardware. Jim in particular is Mr. I'll wire anything to anything. But we have struggled. All of us there, or well, certainly you and I, Holger, have struggled to get a machine compatible with Windows 11. What chance does a normal person have? A regular, I'm in my office and I'm Doris, or I'm the, junior accountant working from home, who wants to have Windows 11. When people start releasing applications that require Windows 11, what's going to happen? There is going to be, for some time to come, two versions of Windows that are the prime versions. I absolutely guarantee it. Because what they're talking about here, they've said, I think they said 2028 or something. I read somewhere, maybe 25. Microsoft are going to keep Windows 10 actively maintained going forwards for a long time. I think this is going to be another Windows 7 / era where so many people were using. I mean, for a long time, if you went to an ATM and it crashed, it was running an embedded version of Windows XP long after Windows XP disappeared. And the reason was that it was just too difficult for them to adopt a different version of embedded Windows. I think that Terry Patterson says the normal person does the Apple thing and buys a new computer. Yes, exactly. And I think that's what Holger was alluding to. But, if the bunch of us are having trouble, I think that, the majority of people are going to go, you know what, Windows 11 is very pretty and all the rest of it, but I'm not going to upgrade. Where does that put us as application developers when you have people that have got Windows 10 or Windows 11 and you want to use some kind of cool Windows 11 feature that is going to come about because Microsoft are going to kind of add the new cool things into Windows 11? Where does it put us in a position where we say, hey, let's start using Microsoft Teams for embedded chat or something like that, because that's the way they're pushing things. If you've previously relied on Skype as part of your application or part of your business workflow, you're stuck because Skype, we know now, Skype does not work well on Windows 11. All of us are having problems. One of the reasons why we're having trouble this morning. But this is not just planned obsolescence. This is invited obsolescence in the sense that they've said let's come up with Windows 11. Let's make it do some mildly new things. But one of the big things we're going to do is introduce these requirements. Yeah, it's going to cause a lot of grief. I don't know about what you two.
Well, it's interesting. So one thing, in response to the comment about people buying new machines. So I'd heard about this. That apparently there is you guys can't see my screen. So there's an issue with pre-built machines that are causing some performance issues under Windows 11, specifically in games. Has something to do with.
I can see it on the preview of your screen. Let's come up.
virtualized base security has something to do with the TPM module or something. I don't remember the details on this. But actually, so
Right.
honestly, so I really like Windows 11. I think there's a lot of great things about it. Yes, there's a lot of issues too. Some of them are just, the whole changing technologies is always complicated. But I feel like that it's a good thing that they are moving towards the TPM requirement, but I feel like it should have been rolled out maybe slower. But at the same time, I guess they're keeping Windows 10 compatibility going, so we can still use Windows 10 for a while. But it is certainly living on the cutting edge is a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. As Roland pointed out in the chat, you can set up a virtual TPM in VMware, which is true, and that's what I have. Actually, I have a virtual machine running right now. It's got Windows. Oh, it just upgraded to Windows 11 Insider. Dang it. Okay, it was released Windows 11. Now it just upgraded to Windows 11 Insider because I forgot to take it off the Insider track.
You forgot to tick the box that said exit the Windows 11 the Windows Insider program with the next major release of the software. And guess what? I ticked that box on my Surface Go because I'm like, yeah, cool. I've been testing it for ages because obviously I have to test my software to make sure it works on Windows 11. Had it on a Surface Go because it's a nice little cool laptop about that big. And I ticked the box to say because people don't know what the Windows Insider program is. You get preview versions of Windows to try things out if you're a developer. And there's a little tick box that says when the next major release of the operating system comes out, exit the Windows Insider program. So instead of having a beta version or beta version of Windows, you get the legit full version working. I ticked that on my Surface Go. Can you guess what happened? The Surface Go is not officially supported on the retail version, only the Insider's version. So I'm now permanently stuck on the Insider's version forever on the Surface Go. I cannot get legit Windows 11, but I'm running the latest version of Windows 11. I'm like, how is this sane? How is this possible? It's just, I have enough issues as it is a developer and a project manager without Microsoft making my life incredibly difficult over simple things. Clearly, they're saying, oh, there might be bugs and all the rest of it. I get that, but hey, it's running on my machine and I tested all my stuff on it. What's your solution, Microsoft?
Looking for the button now, by the way, because I was wondering the same thing, how long I have to be with an Insider version, because this is the ridiculous thing. If you are a Microsoft partner, like my company is, for example, you don't get a Windows 11 image right now if you want to install it in a virtual machine. The only thing you get is an Insider preview that then automatically updates to the latest and greatest.
Actually, there is a download link now where you can download Windows 11. And I will put this in the YouTube chat for people that haven't worked out where that link is. Not difficult.
I obviously haven't worked it out, Ian.
Well, anybody who's good at technology would be able to. But I've put the link in there. But it's not. Don't make it too difficult. But if you go in there, you can download an ISO. But they also allow you to directly download versions of it. Now, what they test when they're doing that or not, I don't know. But that is the retail version, that link. And the download will actually, if you download the ISO, you can use it to build VMs. So I personally haven't because I don't use that many VMs. But they normally have, there's a developer, for those that don't know it, Microsoft do like a development, I forget what they call it. They've got a name for it, but it's a VM that expires every 90 days. And it's always got the latest version of Windows with Visual Studio and a few other toys in it. I think the Sign Tools installed Windows SK and AK and all the rest of it. But that gives you a Windows machine ready to go. It's a VM. Not sure how big it is, but you just go and search for development VM and it's for free. It's designed to, and it's annoying if you're going to do in it, because after 90 days the thing just dies. It's literally dead. There's no. I think you might be able to put a key in it or something, but
well, looking at the version that I have installed, that has been, installed using the virtual image that was provided by Microsoft before for Windows 11. The unenroll this device when the next version of Windows releases is disabled. I can't click it. And if I want to click on unenroll this device immediately, it tells me it'll be going back to Windows 10, not going back to Windows 11.
Yeah, Terry Peterson says he has a machine as well that is an old CPU, no CPM, TPM, and officially isn't supported, but it's running Windows 11 Insider preview. But I think they clearly turned off the requirements for the Insider preview. They did say they were going to do that because of the how could anybody engineer their software to circumnavigate that problem if they can't actually run Windows 11 in the first place? So it's a kind of chicken and the egg situation. They realized that their requirements were too onerous, and there was a big backlash on social media saying this is ridiculous, and what they didn't want, I'm guessing, I mean, I don't have any insider knowledge on this, ironically, but I'm guessing that a few people freaked out a bit in the management and said, let's soften the requirements whilst we're in the honeymoon phase where we're trying to introduce Windows 11 and create some buzz over it and stop people freaking out so much about the TPM requirement. But it stopped me from upgrading a machine that's working perfectly well under Windows 10, and there's nothing wrong with that PC. Actually, the keyboard's broken, but that's a different problem. But other than that, it's an absolutely fine PC. I use it regularly to presentations, develop stuff. It's a fast machine. It's never going to run Windows 11 unless they remove the CPU generation requirement, which they may not be able to do. It may be that they've included some instructions in Windows 11 that require a certain instruction set to be present, or some other problem. I don't know why they do it, but it's a problem. And whilst we're talking about it, I mean, those are the requirements, and we've got the links there. The other thing we were all talking about is that when you actually do finally get Windows 11, however you get it, it's all of us have had a little complaint about that, and things that we're not happy with it on it. I don't hear Jim. I see Jim talking on the preview there. I don't know where Jim just said something a second ago. But oh no, you're there. Yeah. Yeah. To me, you're stuck. I can hardly hear what you're saying. It's cutting out, but I'm sure it's fine. Trust me, I'm sure people in the chat will say if they're not hearing us properly. So
I'm sure. One thing I was going to say, I'm not sure what I started to say earlier, but one thing I was going to say is I think, like I said, I think it's a good thing that Microsoft is moving towards the TPM module because it does improve platform security. We all love to complain about Windows forcing us to update, but before, I mean, if you think back to the time before Windows forced us to update, Microsoft computers were getting destroyed all the time by all these viruses that were just ravaging the internet, and because people were running really outdated versions of Windows, and so it was just really, really, really bad. So there is, as a technology company, they do need to kind of push us forward to a degree, and oftentimes we kind of don't want to, but it certainly is a balance with that. So, I
mean, I totally get it, and I agree that eventually you have to pull the trigger and say sorry, but you can't keep using mid 1990s technology forever. Eventually, things have to move on, and certainly with Windows, there are so many opportunities for them to resolve some of the problems, as you say, like the viruses, that it's just something that they've eventually got to say, do you know what, this is a huge problem, allowing people to have an insecure system. And although there's going to be pain forcing people onto TPM2, the machines will atrophy over time and disappear. So, 5 years is a long time, thanks to Moore's law. who says every 18 months, the price is half and the speed doubles. But it's true. It's still a truism that Moore's law holds out, and in fact, probably we actually are better than Moore's law in that things more than double and also reducing price thanks to global capitalism and globalization, or however you want to refer to it. But it's still a problem. Require a bit of a pain in the neck. So should we talk about some of the things we do and don't like about Windows 11, apart from
Yes.
I think positives and negatives on it, really.
Well, I mean, the hardware requirements is a big deal because a lot of people, if you're looking to upgrade, it is going to be a bit of a there's a lot to consider there. So that is certainly something that is good that we're talking about that. But yeah, let's talk some more about some of the good things. Actually, was it someone just said that they want Windows 7 user interface with the latest Windows under the hood. Yeah, it would be nice if there was some way that you could, like Linux can, right, where you can run your whatever Windows manager you want to make it look like you wanted to.
Yes, yeah. Do you know what? I personally, I mean, I don't know anything about this, but it would not surprise me that WSL-G, as it is now, the Wii system for Linux, G version. I think that I can see that is the possibility of having different desktops one day. Because it wouldn't be too much of a leap of faith to say, well, okay, for those that don't know, a WSL, you must be hiding under a rock or something. Windows system for Linux allows you to run Linux applications on your Wii, and with WSL2, which is a second version of that, have happened. One of them very recently. Number one is that is now available in the Windows App Store, so that it's much easier to install. Somebody's going crazy about the CPU usage of 100%. Not our fault. In the chat, the WSL, yes, it allows you to run Linux applications on your machine quite safely. You can install Ubuntu in this thing, or you can install Kali Linux or whatever version of Linux you like. The latest, most up-to-date version in Windows 11 also includes a thing called WSL-G, and that allows you to run Linux applications with a graphical user interface. Previously, it was command line only, like Vim or something like that, or any of the other popular command line tools, or a daemon or something like that. This latest version allows you to natively run Linux graphical applications in your Windows system. Weird. Windows 11 also allows you to run Android applications on your Windows machine now, which is also slightly freaky.
Right, that's still coming soon. The Android support is.
Okay, well, the My Phone, which is the phone app that comes there.
Right, so My Phone is running is running the app on your phone and then giving you your screen, but they're also going to run it natively, right?
Yeah, I think it cheats, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's running the app on
or
the
something
phone,
like
right?
that. I think. Yeah. But I mean, Samsung also had this Samsung DeX. I wrote a whole article, but in fact, the Windows 11 article on the blog does talk about Samsung DeX and say the good points and bad points about DeX, because DeX does allow you to run Android apps on a Samsung phone on your computer, your Windows computer. Again, it's using some kind of proprietary technology in the background, but it made my Samsung Galaxy Note 10, which is this thing that I have here, heat up like nobody's business. I actually thought the phone would melt. It was that hot. So clearly, it's destroying the phone doing that. But you could run the Android apps, and the native, as you said, native 11 Android technology. I didn't know it hadn't been released yet. I've not got that far, but the idea will be that it will provide a little kind of mini virtual machine sandbox for those apps, and those Android apps will run in their own space, and they'll just run like they're an app on a Windows machine. How good that'll be, who knows? Because obviously they're designed for a phone, or they're designed for a tablet, and now you're suddenly going to be running it on a desktop, which is different, generally different environment altogether in terms of screen space. maybe they'll provide the ability to have an API that can detect that capability, and you can morph your apps into, suddenly running full screen Windows, and even though they're Android. That's going to be interesting.
So I do have a demo of the WSL2 on Windows with RAD Studio here. Let's see if it works. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. Hold on.
Jonas Forstrom, who's clearly a droll, says, make RAD Studio 11 require a TPM2 module. He did put a smiley face. I think he was joking.
Well, we're going to see, I think we're going to see more requirements for TPM2 over time, because it is that trusted, that security thing. And this is something that Microsoft's been trying to do for a while, and there was a lot of pushback. At one point, there was an issue where, like, you couldn't build your own hardware or something like that, and people were like, no, we're not doing that, and so they stopped that one. But there's been a lot of effort going into trying to make this work. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen now. This is running RAD Studio 11, and I haven't ran this since my system rebooted, installing the new preview. So we'll see what happens.
15 seconds, we were already in.
Yeah, we're waiting for the
sorry,
to catch up.
You guys get a delay.
That's okay. We'll talk amongst ourselves. Yeah. Oh, there you go. So now we can see it. Cool. Can you see the preview, Holger?
No, not yet. My YouTube is even farther behind, I guess. There we go.
I need to figure out a way to share my screen back to you.
Oh, yeah. Don't fiddle with it.
Don't even try today.
We're cool right now.
All right. So I'm running. I've got Windows Subsystem for Linux running Ubuntu on here, and then in RAD Studio, something.
Love the backdrop, Jim.
I put a little time into that. Something broke on my.
That's Windows Terminal as well, for those that don't know. This is the replacement, I suppose, for the Windows command line. I use Windows Terminal all the time. I absolutely love it. And every time I'm demonstrating something to someone and I open a Windows Terminal window and I've got a tabbed command line that's got DOS in one, well, DOS equivalent in one window, PowerShell in another.
And Ian's Skype crashed again.
I guess so. Yeah, Skype on Windows 11 is not a good idea. Yeah, I see. He was talking about Windows Terminal, and the one thing that makes it so useful is the fact that you have all the Windows, the subsystems that you install, the command line, and everything in one terminal, and you can easily switch them on in different tabs. So you can have Linux in one tab, Windows in another one, and even different Linux distributions in different tabs. So it's really good.
Okay. For some reason, I think it has to do with updating. So I ran my Windows 11 broke my when I reinstalled Windows 11, it broke my license activation on Delphi for some reason, which I don't know why. I've never had it do it before. I reactivated it, but apparently didn't activate it right, so I have to fix that. But I did run it from last time I ran this, and
there he is.
It took a second to pop up, but there it is. And usually, let me run this. If I run this again, this is usually much faster than that. Something about the last update. See, usually it comes up very quickly when you run it.
You gotta love Skype, haven't you? The reliability of it is amazing. I'm the only one out of all three of us that's actually running on a Windows PC, and yet my Skype is less stable than yours. There's something very wrong about that.
Yeah. Anyway, so Roland said will probably become future reality. The TPM, already Microsoft Office, etc., store license keys in TPM if available. It helps to fight piracy. Yeah, it helps fight piracy. It helps fight corruption. I mean, it's one of those things like if for a lot of times people like complain about the Windows saying, if you're not activated, it says your Windows may be insecure because it's not activated. And part of that is actually true, because if you have let's say you've installed Windows from an untrusted source, right? And it could have something in there, like, for example, your root keys for your SSL that are built into the operating system could be compromised. And if somebody creatively put their own root key in there, right, then they would they'd be able to sign things as whoever they wanted to, and you would have no way of knowing that it wasn't a Microsoft update, for example. So there is legit a lot of risk in piracy and in not having things secure. And it unfortunately, too often it feels like security is at odds with usability. Ideally, it shouldn't be, but frequently it feels that way. And I know I wrote some software a while back for my dad for his business, and I put some password requirements, like your password had to be at least 8 characters long, way back a long time ago. And he's like, "Can I have a password just 1 character?" And I'm like, "No."
OMG. No, you cannot.
But it was, it's one of those things that it is important. I did have a friend that had a pirated copy of Age of Empires 2, if I remember correctly. And every time he installed it, I'm not sure if you remember the Cult of the Dead Cow and Back Orifice 2 was a exploit that, if installed on your computer, gave people full control over your Windows computer. And he didn't realize every time he would reinstall and install Age of Empires, then all of a sudden his computer was compromised and he couldn't figure out why. And it was because he had this one pirated game. So yeah, always code sign your applications. It is important. It is kind of annoying. Yes, I understand. But it is an important thing to do.
Code signing stops you from distributing virus software. It stops you from your app being virused by some bad actor and then redistributing it with your name attached to it. Because as soon as they amend your app, it breaks the code signature, and it will actually come up and say this application is invalid or something. I forget the exact wording, but it basically is saying it's been compromised by a virus. You mentioned Cult of the Dead Cow. I must mention one anecdote about that, because something very interesting happened during the US elections, and actually. Because we don't really talk about politics and we don't want to, but one of the people that was running was a guy called Beto O'Rourke, who is a very liberal candidate, and I really wanted him to win. He was running against my Texas senator here, so the reason I wanted him to win was, first of all, I saw him in person. He's a very interesting guy, but secondly, he's an ex-member of the Cult of the Dead Cow. That would have, if he'd have won. By the way, he had a hacker handle. His name was Psychedelic Rainbow Warrior. I mean, how cool is that? Now, if he'd have won, that would have been a senator who was an ex-hacker who had a very cool hacker handle. Can you imagine him in the Senate? I think that things would have really gone forwards, because one of the things that's missing in every country, not just the United States, but the UK, and I'm sure same's true of Germany as well, and a few other places, that the politicians are out of touch with the reality, in my opinion, of things like social media. I mean, the interrogation of people like Mark Zuckerberg is just excruciating to watch, because you're like, you guys, I'm sorry, but you really don't seem to understand a single thing about anything that the rest of us do day to day with Windows and Facebook and mobile phones and cell phones, and stuff like that. But it would have been very cool if a guy from the Cult of the Dead Cow became a senator and potentially president. That would have been an interesting world to live in.
That would have been.
Anyway, sorry, I digress a little bit from Windows 11, but
there's actually reminds me, Estonia apparently had, which David Millington, one of our product managers, lives there. They have incredibly good technical infrastructure at the government level, like top in the world. And part of it was one of the leaders that they had, I can't remember who it was. He told me the details, and I don't remember all of it. But somebody that was elected in early on had a background in IT, and he's like, hey, this is important, we need to do this, and it made a huge difference. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I was just listening to Thing of the Day talking about the US and China's AI Cold War, essentially, that's going on in technology. It's a big deal. There's a lot of stuff going on in technology, and it's important. And
well, it is important. I mean, it's clear that both in the UK, from these from official statistics, it's clear that foreign powers definitely trying to influence the Brexit vote, where the UK left Europe, and by the look of it, may even have been successful. There was also a similar thing. I saw a documentary that suggested it was tried out in some other countries, smaller countries as well, to see whether they could do it. And then obviously the United States, there's some suggestion that, there was a campaign of technological influence through social media and a few other things as well to try and change the way we think. I've said this before. There's a really great book by Eli Parisa called The Filter Bubble. Definitely, anybody who's developing applications should read this. There's a few others, like there's one by, I forget his name off the top of my head, but it's called Addicted. And it is about how applications use notifications, they use managed social media streams, but also notification streams where you cannot filter it by date deliberately, so that they can manipulate us into making the applications more addictive, for whatever reason. And I've noticed that the Windows 11 installed, just to bring us back on focus a little bit, down in the left-hand corner, there's this little very cool kind of preview. Sorry, if you tap on it, it's like I forget what they call it now, but it's a nice fluid UI interface with acrylic in the background, semi-transparent kind of stuff, and it's got like stock market figures and your to-do list for today, and also a news feed. But that news feed is newsfeed curated by Microsoft, and all you can do is say the subjects you are interested in and go through and delete the ones you don't want to see. So let's say you hate, I don't know, British people, and you say, I don't want any of the British news articles coming up. You can do that, but what you can't do is say the ones that you do want to see all the time, and increase that. There's got to be a reason for that. It's just a weird usability thing in Windows 11, and that's what slightly worries me about the way things are heading with operating systems like Windows 11 and some of the applications that we're using day in, day out, is that our control as users is being taken away from us bit by bit, so that the operating system is managing us to work in a particular way. And that's a little bit insidious. If it's for a good thing and you trust whoever's making those decisions, then it's great. But if really it's an implementation of the filter bubble, so that you only see the things that they think you want to see. We all know what happens when that happens. You end up with subjects that you get fed a never-ending loop that just confirms your biases. The confirmation bias problem. And
by the way, it's not in the bottom left corner, and that is one of the major annoyances.
Yeah, bottom left, middle. Yes, exactly.
Everything is centered by default, and thankfully there is a configuration option. At first there was none, but now you can put it back to the left. And in that process, I got to say, all the new search features,
widgets, that's what it calls it,
are there. And then you're calling the widgets, first thing that goes on my system. Yeah. It's like right-click, remove, right-click, remove. And pardon?
You can't turn it off. What happens?
It's gone in my system.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, maybe you can through a setting or something. But anyway, yes, it's one of those things where you're like, yeah.
So this actually brings me to something. Microsoft recently came out in support of right to repair. And so for those of you that don't know what right to repair is, it's this idea that you should be able to have whoever you want to make changes to and modify your hardware. And this is big in the smartphone space.
Yeah.
A number of smartphone manufacturers, notoriously, if you do not go to one of their authorized repair centers, you replace the hardware. I actually saw a video where someone got two identical iPhone 13 whatevers and took and swapped out the main board between the two, and a number of things just said, oh, they don't work anymore, or got error messages or whatever, and then swapped them back and it fixed it. And the reason is because every piece of hardware in there has a serial number on it, and the OS is encoded with those serial numbers so that you cannot swap them out. And they say, and there is some potential truth to this, that, for example, if you replaced the fingerprint scanner on the phone, you could have one that was compromised. So, again, there is some truth to that, but I feel like there should be some way that you should be able to get around it. And there's two sides to this, but some of the places this comes up big is in John Deere tractors, big, huge company making tractors for farmers. The farmers cannot maintain the tractors themselves. They have to take them to a John Deere center to get hardware and get changes in the software and stuff like that. It's more and more, you don't own hardware, you're basically leasing it. When my son bought his...
It's a special wrench and stuff like that, yeah.
My phone, what was that, Holger?
It's a special wrench you need to loosen screws. Something ridiculous as that. It's not just electronic parts. It's literally like screws and wrenches and bolt nuts.
The iPhone's little special screwdriver is like everything $60 or something like that. It's all, they have like three prices: 19, 60, and 120 or something.
Well, the irony is, and I've heard about this movement last week on a news show from Jon Stewart, who did the Daily Show here in the US, and he always looks at one certain thing. In his first show, he looked at this repair movement, and he mentioned Apple, he mentioned John Deere, he mentioned other car manufacturers. Everybody has a car, so we all know that we can't have to go to certified shops nowadays. The irony is he is exclusive to Apple TV Plus. So that's why I take these reports with a grain of salt,
But these cables as well that you'll get to do something like, I don't know, convert to a HDMI, or so you plug it in the bottom of your Apple phone or whatever, and now they can tell the difference whether they're genuine parts or not because they have chips inside them. You plug it in and it knows it's a HDMI converter version 2, this speed or whatever, and even with earbuds and things like that, they can tell. So, but luckily, I hate to say Chinese manufacturers, but they are almost predominantly Chinese manufacturers.
All manufacturing's in China, so that's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, but I have some earbuds somewhere around here that are not Apple ones. I happened to buy them in the UK because I needed some earbuds, and this stall was selling them, and they were like a third of the price of the Apple ones. I put them in, they worked. My iPhone went, oh, you've got some Apple earbuds, ding, and it worked. But I guarantee you they're probably breaching some form of agreement there, because there's no way that Apple would have allowed those to go, yeah, they're Apple buds. They must have cracked it. But that's a common problem. But, it just feels like things are getting more and more sophisticated. And with that, we seem to be going backwards in terms of our convenience as consumers. I think the right to repair movement is a great idea, but of course at the moment, Apple are actively combating people who are trying to access iPhones to spy on them. I mean, there's a company just recently, an Israeli company, who sold a module that can allow governments to effectively spy on anybody they want if they've got an iPhone, and it's invisible, undetectable apparently. But they discovered that I think I don't want to malign a country, but I think it might have been Dubai or something like that, had been doing this to some of their dissidents, and that company had not licensed it beyond a certain point to Dubai. So they turned off the software so that it no longer worked. But it was allowing a nation state to track some of their people. And again, this could be wrong, but I think it was, either a dissident or a member of the royal family where they were having some issues or something like that. I don't make any qualifications whether that's legal, illegal, whatever. All I'm saying is that was the kind of scenario. But Apple also actively takes steps to protect people's privacy. And they are big enough, because they're the richest company in the world, where they can push back against somewhere like the United States saying, we want to look at the phone and see what's on there. Apple will say, oh, come back to us with something legitimate to justify, justify your spying. Because in the US, I'm a US citizen, and so is Jim.
Didn't you get citizenship recently?
Protected.
Like, okay.
No, he's not a citizen. No. He's actually here illegally, and the men are on the way because I've called them in. No, he's here as a legitimate resident, but the Constitution protects people who are U.S. citizens from being spied on by their own government. I love that. I love that point about the United States, that we have got written down somewhere that the government. Now, of course, 9/11 caused all sorts of problems, and some parts of the Constitution were not amended but blurred a little bit, which then, of course, now governments have done something about it and said, no, we're not going to do this. No, we're not going to torture people. That's not allowed. There's a constitutional protection against cruel and unusual punishment. You can make your own assumptions whether these things are happening or not happening. And again, I'll make no comment on that. But Apple, really, we're relying on Apple being good. How much do we know, for example, about what goes on behind the scenes? Microsoft and Amazon were in a bidding war over providing services to the US government. And I think Amazon won out, so Microsoft sued, and the administration changed to the Biden administration, and that deal was reviewed. And I do that in my little air quotes, which I hate, but and all of a sudden that deal was squashed, and Microsoft suddenly got the deal. Now, I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but we are relying on the people that we're using these operating systems for to play fair. I don't know if Apple do lots of stuff nastily behind the scenes that we don't know about and just look like they're cool. But that if you've got an Apple iPhone, your messaging is encrypted end to end. It's true of WhatsApp, but I know that if I send an iMessage, it's encrypted. And nobody can crack that. And I think that Apple are sufficiently powerful enough that they probably push back, but they still got to operate within the laws of the country they're in. So if somewhere like China says, no, I want Windows 11 to be accessible by my spies and to pass its traffic through a particular node every time someone turns it on, how is anybody going to know unless they find out? If your iPhone turns on and the first thing it does is pings the British government and lets them know that you're online, how are we going to know unless we can track those packets? And of course, those packets that are going across the internet could be faked or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, the NSA and all the other companies that are doing that actually are in the middle of that backbone of the internet. So I don't know, it's a great new world. I love advances in Windows 11 and things like that, but I think with these advances coming on, as it becomes more sophisticated, we lose a little bit of our innocence as users. We're now losing a little of the control. And Linux still represents a certain amount of freedom. Richard Stallman's kind of GNU/Linux crusade is a bit over the top, shall we say, to be nice. But he's got a point, in some ways, which is, free software in that respect. He believes it should be genuinely free. Now, that's at odds with most governments around the world. Yeah.
So you mentioned something pretty interesting, because you said Apple has the power to go against a lot of people, and I think that is something we can mention about Windows 11 again. Windows 11 can still be virtualized, and Mac OS, it's Apple doesn't want it, and whenever there is another update, your virtual machine breaks. So that's a clear difference.
I'm not saying I like Apple's way of doing things.
No, I know, and you made a valid point and was good. And that is something we can say about Windows 11. You can virtualize it without any issues. Works fine inside of a virtual machine. So for us as Delphi developers, we can definitely test it and build software for it inside of a virtual machine. And for the upper folks out there, it also works nicely on the M1 processor. So even that virtualization has been worked out, because it wasn't, at least I heard, I hadn't tried it, it wasn't working previously on the M1. And that is also another thing, but that's true for Windows 10 and Windows 11. You can't run, boot. You can't boot a Windows natively on a Mac anymore with the M1 processor. That doesn't work.
Yeah, David I makes a point as well about, he says that the only thing he wants to know from Apple is an accounting of the cost of supporting developers, not the cost of designing / building / selling iPhones, versus the revenue from the App Store. Because of course this is the whole bag of worms, which actually is a very interesting difference in Windows 11, which we'll talk about in a second. But he says cost of supporting the developers must be very low, since they have to have the libraries, code, and the APIs to build their own apps and phone functionality. Plus, of course, they have to have a device. I mean, I literally have 2 phones because I need to run on a genuine device. Luckily, I have a phone plan that lets me have one. Literally have to have physical devices, because you can't just run an Apple app on anything. It's got to be on an Apple hardware. And actually, to code sign and create the hardware, I need to have a Macintosh sitting over there in the background in order to actually produce it, which is one of the not so good things that I don't like about Apple. So yeah, and of course I pay $99 or it's $108 now, I think, $108 to Apple every year to be a member of the developer program. And yes, the advantage is
with different taxes. That's why.
Yes, exactly.
It's still $99.99.
Yeah, well, it's yeehaw. But you know, you do get access to the libraries and things like that, and you can say on the face of it, well, it's a $99 access fee to get Xcode and all the rest of it. But
didn't I make that point to you last week?
Yes.
People complaining about, oh, why is Delphi expensive? You know, compared to Apple, who give us Xcode for free, or only $90 or only $100. Well, that's not really true, because I was just in the situation that all the software that I had, or the hardware I had, from way too old. So they made me buy new hardware, new devices, and that's significantly more in sum than paying a yearly subscription for Delphi. I mean, just as a side note, you know.
And as David I says, you pay your $99, but then they still take a cut every time someone buys your app.
30%, I think.
30%, yeah. And I think they might have a stage, because they're a bit worried about competition laws, and I think that they're looking at perhaps having a stage payment. To kind of compare that to Android and Microsoft. Android, you pay your fee and then they do take a cut, but you pay that fee once. But if you don't actively have an app, eventually they will just close your account. Android, that's what happened to me with an old account I had. I paid for years ago, didn't use it for anything, and they're like, well, you know you paid for it, but one of the details is you've actually got to use it. Genuine, didn't really matter, wasn't that much, but even so, Microsoft with Windows 11, the App Store is now been opened up to all types of apps, and the delivery mechanism is also even more wide open. And if I believe I'm correct here, and anybody in the chat who wants to correct me if I'm wrong, but with Microsoft, you can advertise that your app needs a paid subscription on a website or something like that. Whereas Apple do not allow you to do that. In Apple, you absolutely cannot say, if you're Netflix, for example, download the Netflix app and sign up on our website for a subscription. No. If you want to do that, you actually have to do it through the Apple Store, and the Apple Store will take 30% of that revenue. And at Netflix's scale, that's a lot of money, but also it's probably their profit margin in that, $8.99 a month or whatever the Netflix subscription is. And for me, Microsoft is a better environment, but as far as I'm aware, the Windows App Store was very underused. You could search for apps in there and you would find some of the more popular possibly, but it was never took off quite as much as Apple's nice little walled garden app store. Well, with Windows 11, because they're opening up to almost any form of install that you want, you could literally download a .exe installer instead of a .msi or Apex or whatever technology, and they want it to be where you can get your apps from, and they're trying to make that as low friction for the developers as possible to join the App Store and do that. Terry Peterson says, my free Microsoft Store app requires a subscription with a third party. Yes. Yeah, so there you go. So Microsoft do allow that. And then David I says again, because he's making some very good points, should have got him on really, but do the current calculation of Apple revenue from an app store, 15 or 30% of whatever is negotiated, 15% millions of dollars for an app revenue for Pokemon Go. And he also says Google is evil this way as well. Well, I'm not probably would use the word evil, but but I think what he means is that it does seem like it's not right. But the Competition Commission that have dragged Apple in and had a good shout on them from the EU and said, tell us about your App Store policies. Why is it that you've got to do certain things with your app? They've said, well, the reason that we take that 30% is because we don't believe that you should use our App Store for free as a developer. What they don't want to be is a vector for downloading applications. They pay for all the bandwidth. They pay for all the curation of the app. They pay for the protection of the app and all the rest of it. And they think that needs to be paid for because they've got data centers that store it, and they presumably do some security scans in the background, and they have people that manage complaints about the apps, and so those people should.
The reality is that the value of having an iPhone, 90% of that comes from the apps that are there, and people would not be buying an Android phone or an Apple phone if it wasn't for the apps being developed by the developers. And so
yeah, otherwise it's just a phone.
Yeah, and I mean, the Windows Phone in many ways was a superior platform, but because they didn't have the ecosystem of apps, no one wanted to use it, and that's.
I remember, I may have mentioned this on the stream before, but I remember when I first saw the iPod Touch, which was the first. That was the first incarnation of an Apple device that looked like the iPhone does today, and it had the App Store on it. Yeah, initially it came with no apps that you can install. I may be misremembering, but I remember anyway being in this office. I worked for a different company at the time in the UK, and the guy, he liked toys, technological toys. So he bought this iPod Touch, and we looked at it, and in my hand I had this small device. It's about the size of this iPhone SE maybe, and I could go into the calculator. I could go into surf the internet in an early form of the Safari, and I just said to him that's the thing that I've been waiting to see happen, is a true handheld computer. Before I'd had the Sharp Zorus and a few of the Apple Newton type things and stuff like that, but this was the first device where it just made a lot of sense. and then they went on and obviously brought out the iPhone. So because people kept saying, well, why don't you add a phone capability to the iPod Touch? They make it sound in the movies that you see of Apple as if, there was a light bulb moment where they went, hey, let's turn it into a phone. But people were asking for ages add a phone capability, like a Skype or some other form of voice over IP type technology to the iPod Touch. That's what was being asked for. But instead, obviously, quite rightly, they built the technology. And oh my word, my dog is upside down doing something weird. What are you doing?
I had exactly the same experience that you just described.
Yeah.
It's like, was the first product that truly made a computer and the internet accessible with ease. And you didn't even have apps that you could download at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that is the reason that they opened it up, that you could build your own apps. And that was the number one reason that they have been so successful with it.
But I think
tying their own platform has also been a very, very smart move, because that way you drive sales of your hardware. That was just the smart thing to do.
Yeah, smart thing, but not for the consumer. I mean, their argument is that it means that they can, and I actually, I agree with them on this. They can make sure that those apps largely are virus free, because if you download an app from the official Apple App Store, it's a very strong possibility you will not get a virus from it. That was not true for any other technology at the time that the Apple App Store launched. You would have an Android phone, it would get compromised very quickly. If you had a Windows PC,
what your application can do and can't do. You're not allowed to send, and they also have the operating system built in a way that you can't issue sending text messages to people, from your whole address book and stuff like that. These things are simply not possible without user interaction. Yeah, he's having a good. Hopefully, we didn't put him to sleep, huh?
This is my office manager. He's actually wagging his tail,
so
he's not actually. There was weird.
Yeah. Oh, we've lost Holger. Weird. There was a thing with.
You paused, Holger. Sorry, Jim.
There was an issue with. Actually, Holger mentioned that the Android phone could grab your own phone book. Actually, iPhone did that as well. That was a big thing. Like there was a thing like the most popular camera app on the Apple Store was also uploading the user's entire phone book and stuff. So anyway, it's a lot going on for sure, and I agree that there's the problem as these tech giants get bigger and bigger is they get more and more power in different areas and stuff, and so it's politics and technology certainly becoming very intertwined. So let's get back to Windows 11 specifically. I do have the Ian's app or demo app here for the rounded corners. Let me share my screen.
Go for it. And a disclaimer here now that I actually stole Jim's code. I didn't steal Jim's code as such. I stole Jim's very good use of the API. I didn't realize it was him. I thought it was Marco. It was on the Delphi 11 launch. Oh, there we go. Holger's back now. Just so you know, Holger, your video is working, I think, or you might be paused. But yes, I just prettied up what Jim had written. So this is a joint.
Yeah. So the basics of this is that by default, this is the default behavior. You can see the rounded corners here. Let me. I think I can zoom in on that here. Nope.
I'll paste the link to it. There's a repo for it and a blog article actually. So
the corners are rounded by default on Windows. With Delphi applications, both VCL and FireMonkey, but you can change that corners by an API call. And so here we'll turn off the rounded corners, and then you can also go to a small rounded corners, which removes the shadow and just has a very slight bit of rounding to it. And this fundamentally, it's interesting. Microsoft has an article on how to enable rounded corners in your applications, but the reality is that because the way Delphi you're building a native application, it just works. you know,
Yeah, and
It has a
in
lot to
fact,
do with the.
we have an app that doesn't understand the rounded corners,
Mhm.
and it starts with rounded corners fine. So it's you know, the default behavior is for them to round them. We have one that's got some tool windows in there. If you're a Delphi person watching this stream, if you set your app to have a tool window size border, then it does actually round them with the smaller rounding. So it does do some clever stuff behind the scenes. It works out what the difference is. Yeah, interesting. But I've put a link in the chat to that Embarcadero blog post about it. As I said, Jim mentioned it in the Windows 11, the Delphi 11 launch, and he pasted it in the chat. It was a long string of text, and I just turned it into an application that actually did something useful. And plus, it does notifications as well. If you've got Windows notifications on Windows. Yeah, well, I thought I'd show off a few things. People are saying I should give my dog tummy rubs. He's lying on the floor at my feet now. He's fine. He's a very chilled dog, and most of the time he just lies around and does nothing. And I think he's my supervisory influence. He's seen me write millions of lines of code, so, or hundreds of thousands maybe, but not millions. The other app as well is how to detect dark mode, which is kind of if you're gonna make your apps behave nicely in Windows 11, you really should include the dark mode testing and swapping as well. Use your Delphi themes and detect whether dark mode is turned on or off, and then swap to a theme appropriately. Danny Wind, I know, is doing a talk soon. Those of you that know Danny Wind, very good developer, MVP. And I know he's doing about it because he asked me whether he could pinch some code of mine. So, but he actually detects dark mode in a different way. He detects it with an application event, and there's a thing called, I think, immersive color change or something like that. My code does something slightly different. Mine's looking to see if you're in dark mode to start off with, not responding to a change from dark to light mode. So if you put the two of those together, then you'll actually get the complete solution for dark and light mode. But in the European Union, there are some laws about accessibility, and by that we mean for people who've got problems with eyesight, people who are colorblind, people who have other disabilities in terms of reading. I don't think dyslexia is one of them, but you know, that kind of impairment that you wouldn't necessarily think about. And I suffer from eye floaters. You know, these are these things that have a shadow on your eye, and it's just a side effect of me having very poor eyesight. That when you have very poor eyesight, your eyeball elongates, and the more it elongates, the more it can actually cause these floaters. And mine's a -9, so anybody who knows how about these things will go, oh, good grief, why is that not a guide dog instead of a terrier? I find dark mode very useful for me. Now, I don't consider myself in any way disabled, but it is an accessibility thing for me to turn on dark mode. So if your app is bright white and doesn't support dark mode, it's a personal problem for me, because now I'm seeing the floaters, because the floaters are dark, thread-like things that float in front of my vision, and mine are quite pronounced, so they actually can make it difficult to see text which is dark on a white background. If I have dark mode on and the light text is on the dark background, then I don't notice the floaters. I'm looking at the screen now and I can't see them. Some bits look a little bit blurry, but apart from that, these are the things that Windows 11 ushers in, not just the pretty stuff, but much more of that kind of aesthetics. I think they're going to have their wings clipped when it comes to things like the use of the acrylic and blurred backgrounds, because those are definitely not accessibility friendly. But with Windows 11, they've ushered in a lot more accessibility changes so that it's easier for people to tweak the system to make it more friendly to people who've got disabilities, like, for example, they're blind or they're deaf or whatever. There are people that are completely blind who use Windows. I know it seems weird, but it is possible to do. You know, the narrator's been in most versions of Windows since Windows Vista, I think, maybe before that. Someone says, I got floaters after an impact to my right eye. I used to do full contact martial arts, and some of them may be a result of that as well. Yeah. Just get knocked around the head a bit. It might explain a few things about me, might that? That can be serious. Yeah, Barb, don't worry, I get them checked out. I'm so short-sighted, I have to go to the optician regularly. They always like looking at my eyes. So it's one of those things. So.
Actually, we'll circle back to Windows 11 again, but I do want to say, take care of your health, everybody. I always thought carpal tunnel was a myth till I discovered I had it, and it's like, oh, really? All these symptoms I've been having, that's carpal tunnel? Oh, wow, all right. Had to have surgery on my hand. There's a lot of, so it's I guess, unfortunately, health becomes political as well. But do take care of your health. Talk to your doctor. Get checkups, mental, physical, the whole 9 yards. I know 2 people that have had too many problems for not taking care of themselves. So,
people get diseases all the time that could be detected early enough to at least mitigate the symptoms, even if not cure it.
Yeah.
You know.
So if there's any other questions about Windows 11, put them in the question panel here, and otherwise we'll probably be wrapping up here pretty quick. Again, we have an amazing ability to just keep talking about stuff, and that's kind of the idea with this, is we want to just have a casual conversation and invite people to be involved in that. But
Olga's muted. He's trying to talk and we can't hear him. Olga, turn your mic on. Can't hear you.
It's turned on.
Oh, now I can hear you now. Yeah, I couldn't hear you before.
I was just saying, we wanted to talk about one important thing that's important for developers, the context menus.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because they have gotten a little bit crazy in Windows 11, because Microsoft now has a context menu with what they claim the important stuff. And if you want to see the original context menu, especially if you migrate from Windows 10, if you use version control like I do with Tortoise Git and Tortoise SVN, those are on a different page. So in a nutshell, you click 2 times more than before.
Yep.
Yeah. And that bugs me. I actually tweeted about this and got a reply from Jen Gentleman, who works on that team, and she said, "Oh, here's a link to why we did this," and I get why they did it, but it's a massive problem for me as a developer, because I often, am I able to share my screen quickly, Jim, or is that a problem? If not, you can do it. Oh, there you go. You've got your screen up.
I did.
So if you right-click on a Delphi file, if you can see Jim's screen now, you'll see that that's the menu now. Notice 2 things before you go anywhere else. Where's copy and paste?
So copy here. It
used to be on that menu, no longer there. But if you click on more properties, now you can see, for example, open upload with ShareX, scan with Microsoft Defender, copy as path, copy access to. They used to be there all the time on right click, and they've got rid of it. And I was saying to Jen Gentleman, I get why you wanted to do that, and it's because it's the build-up. She said, well, developers can still add to the top level, but most people have upgraded Windows 11 from Windows 10, and I do not have that menu on mine to open in Notepad++ or open in Delphi 11 or anything like that. It's not there anymore, and that to me means I've got to click one more time. I know it's stupid. I know it's just a single click. You just need to click one more time, but I didn't have to before. Why did you take that functionality away? I should be able to drag it or say, I want to reorganize how my context menu works. Not the way Microsoft want it to work, but the way I want it to work.
Yeah, they also did not only change the behavior of it, they also changed the bitmap resources. So you can see it in Jim's screen. But if you use stuff like as Tortoise SVN, which I versioning on Tortoise Git, those icons, they're not masked properly. So the background is black and you have a gray menu, so it looks horrible. But it doesn't seem that Microsoft has given people a thorough heads up how to integrate into the context.
And I think that they had the best intentions. They have an article explaining why there was getting clutter on that menu. It's slower, blah, blah, blah. I understand why they're doing it. But you know what? Windows is a tool. It is not an application you sit in and you can customize this and customize that. It's not an accounts package. It is your tool to launch other programs, do things with your files. And when they change that tool, it's like they're now saying to me, you can't use drill to drill a hole in the wall anymore. You have to hammer the screws in. And say, well, that'll never work. Don't worry. You can actually attach a special bit to the hammer that will make the screw into the wall. Well, that seems like it's more difficult than just screwing it in with a screwdriver. Yeah, but there's a good reason for that. And I don't care what your reason is. This is a tool. Windows is my tool, my daily work tool. And you just broke it for me. And it's not completely broken, but it's just inconvenient. It's just harder to use. And
somebody just said, like, from the maker of your mouse, because you need more clicks.
It's interesting. I used to work for a PC company that made PCs that shipped direct. Micron Computer. They've gone out of business now, unfortunately. Micron PC. They were one of the top PC manufacturers for a while, but there was an interesting thing with Windows 95 it used to be. I remember the Diamond video card drivers installed this thing on the top of your right-click menu. So every time you right-clicked anywhere, it came up with a little thing right up on the top that said Diamond video card. Click here for configuring your video card. And it's like, I don't need that everywhere. And unfortunately, a lot of software companies want to, and I understand it to a degree.
They don't.
Yeah,
they want to. Nicely, is what you're saying.
They want to put things. They want to make their presence on your computer more visible for various reasons. Mindshare, essentially, marketing. And the problem is that I'm trying to remember the guys. I say Raymond Shen, one of the Microsoft guys that does a lot of like low level stuff, did a blog post or was talking about that. People are always saying, "How can I be at the top Z order above everybody else that's also at the top Z order?" Because they wanted to have a window that was always on top of everything. And it's one of those things that as you have the needs of the user and you have the needs of the software developer, right, competing. And what I would have rather seen in that right-click menu is a really easy way to customize that, right? To really easily remove things from that, and so that I don't have, so that I can remove things. Because yes, it does get slow. Everybody wants to put something on there, and it's annoying. But
yeah. And also, their argument is as well that they've got to pull up the icons and all the other resources. Sometimes the context isn't correct. And so they've got a context menu option there that's not appropriate. It's a security thing as well, because there's some of them are trying to run a process, kind of stuff. I get why they're doing it, but I say make it customizable so I can choose, because it's my Windows, not theirs. They're just facilitating. It's my Windows, and I want it to work my way. And I'm a developer, and I'm very fussy about how I like my computer set up. I don't like people fiddling. My wife is a great IT tech, very, very good. But I start twitching if she touches my computer. Not because there's anything on here she can't look at. There's nothing, I don't want her to mess with my stuff. Yeah. I feel like Sheldon Cooper. You're in my spot, Get off my computer.
No, I'm curious to know if if Microsoft's going to make like a new API maybe to get on the new menu maybe, and so that's kind of what people to migrate to the new menu. But I haven't seen anything around that yet. If it was there, then maybe the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
And you know why he's saying that as well is that is actually one of the very cleverest comments I've ever seen anybody say. Because obviously, who went into space today?
Yes, William Shatner was in space today.
William Shatner, 90-year-old, went into space, And I know all of us are techies and Star Trekkies, should I? The tech Trek, I should say. But you know, oldest man to go into space, and it's William Shatner. You know, God, and the best of it was they had that photograph of him wearing his yellow Captain Kirk shirt, and the other crew members were all wearing red shirts. This genius.
I didn't see that. I knew he was going, but I didn't see that. That's really cool.
Oh, you've got to see it. It's so funny. Like, because someone said, "Hey, that I wouldn't want the other guys to wear a red shirt," and there comes a picture. It's just so funny. I'd be very worried. I don't know about you. Yeah, but you know, well done, Captain Kirk or William Shatner, should I say? He should be admired for the fact he's 90 years old and doing that. Never mind what you may or may not think about Shatner as an actor or all the rest of it, but wow, that's an achievement, and you know, it's just the best publicity coup ever is sending Kirk into space. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Shatner did not go into orbit. No, I know that, Dave. But even so, he did go up into space. But you know, didn't DeForest Kelly, who played Scotty or Bones or something, one of those two?
Bones. Don't mess them up.
Yeah, sorry about that. Oh dear, he said I'll probe there. But they took his ashes.
Get my background.
Yeah, silly me. Yeah, I said we're all Trekkies. But yeah, they took his ashes into space, and I think that's just a marvelous thing because so many of us, you know, we love Trek and Star Trek, and hey, yep. What can I say?
Okay, well, thank you everybody for sticking with us through some of the technical problems. We resolved them much quicker this time, and hopefully they will stay resolved. There was some comments about notifications. Honestly, we're trying to work out logistics, stream-wise, and everything else. We'll get back in this stream of things, getting notifications and stuff like that. So sorry if you were watching the replay and wanted to watch live. We will try to do better at making them notifications better in the future so that everybody can get on with us. But thank you for being a part of this. Thank you, Holger and Ian, for coming on and joining us today. And we'll continue to try and improve the experience for presenting and everything as well. So.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We always appreciate it. It's you people that us as well.
Thanks for the input. It was great talking about Windows 11, and see you soon about some mapping stuff.
GIS.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have GIS and also the in the browser as well coming up. So, yep.
Web applications. Live long and prosper.
All right. Yeah.
I used to always do this just to be contrary.
Yeah, I sometimes have to do that.
It's fine.
Yeah.
William
Shatner, come on. You've practiced that too much, clearly.
William Shatner always, if you watch the original series, he always had to go behind his back. If you watch, you can actually see it. He had to go behind his back and raise his arm like that because he couldn't do it. So he still can't. So.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye, Jim.